So good evening and good morning and good afternoon, wherever you are. I really am so excited to be here tonight and teach you as much as possible about astrophotography. So these classes are actually going to be a series of classes. And with this one, we are going to introduce astrophotography. What is astrophotography? Types of astrophotographies, etc. And then we will talk about equipment for Milky Way photography. And then next week, or maybe because of Christmas, it might be the other week, we will talk about planning and shooting settings, and then we will go to deep sky astrophotography. So let's start. I'd like to start with some extreme astrophotography. You all know what Hubble Space Telescope is, right? It's a telescope in the space, and it has a very unique photo. It's called extreme deep field. You see this XDF and the square here. This is a piece of sky deliberately chosen by astronomers and astrophysicists because it looks very empty when we are looking from the sky, from Earth. And it is so small that it is even smaller than 1/10 of the full moon. And in other words, it's just 30 millionth of the whole sky. Can you imagine? That's so small piece of sky. And Hubble takes millions of seconds of shooting from this area and creates a photo called extreme deep field. When you look at that area, it is pitch black, like this. There's nothing. But when you collect more and more light, this photo comes up. What you're looking at is 10,000 of galaxies, 10,000s. Not one, not two, not million, 10,000s of galaxies. Only one or two lights here in this picture you are seeing is stars, like this one, for instance. But the rest are all the stars. And one of the most distant objects in this one is at 13.2 billion light years away. That means that light Hubble captured started its journey 13.2 billion years ago. If you think that Earth is nearly 5 billion years age, when that light started its journey, there was no Earth. And as we know, the universe is 14 billion years old. That light started its journey when universe was only 800 million years old. So this photo is always so extremely, how can I say, extremely affecting me. That shows the power of astrophotography and power of long exposures. The total exposure in this one is equal to 11 days. So 11 times 24 hours. That's too much. But like you see, this big area, it is just the 30 millionth of the whole sky, smaller than the 1/10 of the full moon. It looks empty, just black, but there are 10,000s of galaxies. And these 10,000s of galaxies have at least each have 100 billion stars. So you're looking at 10,000 times 100 billion thousand stars in this picture. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it mind blowing? Yeah. So let's look at our hero. This is Hubble Space Telescope. As its name suggests, it's in space. It's around 400 kilometers and 450 kilometers away from Earth, and even its life ended, it kept serving, and it is still serving. But nowadays, as you may all know, James Webb Telescope is going to be launched very soon. It's going to be larger than Hubble, and it's going to be further than Hubble. And we don't know what's going to discover. So it is really exciting. So this telescope is something called Ritchie-Chrétien reflector. So it has a mirror here. This mirror collects the light from the object that it is looking at. And then there's lots of different cameras and detectors inside the telescope. And it collects the light and creates those photos and also data for scientists, astrophysicists, and astronomers. The diameter of the mirror is 2.4 meters, and the focal length is 57.6 meters. Can you imagine? I mean, we use lenses like 100 millimeter or 10 millimeter, 24 millimeter. This one has 57.6 meters of focal length. So it is amazing. And it has focal ratio of f/24. Yeah, so, and you may know this guy. His name is Edwin Hubble. His discoveries are phenomenal. He was working in Mount Wilson Observatory, and in 1920s, and that time that telescope he was using was the largest telescope, and he discovered that Milky Way galaxy is not the only galaxy in the universe, because before his discovery, we thought there was only Milky Way galaxy and there are nebulae all over. But this is his photo. This is actually a like film, negative film. He was shooting these plates, and this is Andromeda galaxy. We are looking at Andromeda galaxy photo that Edwin Hubble took. So he discovered that there are other galaxies. He also discovered that some of the distant galaxies were going away from us. So the universe was enlarging, universe was inflating. And he also discovered that Andromeda galaxy and our galaxy Milky Way are on collision course. So because he looked at the he actually used something like radar guns, but the light version of it, the light from Andromeda galaxy was turning into blue. That means that it's called blue shifting. It's measured with Doppler effect. That meant that Andromeda galaxy was coming towards our way. So in 4 or 5 billion years, in that time, our galaxies are started to collide, and it will take another 5 billion years to merge into one galaxy. Okay, let's go. Who am I? This is me. My name is Mustafa Aydin, as most of you know, and this is my father. He was a photographer in a small town in Anatolia, and strange enough, his photography studio name was Star. Yıldız means star in Turkish, and you can see the stars. So I think he was around early 20s here in this picture, and it was his first shop. So my first photography teacher was my father, and I can basically say that I was born in a dark room. Yeah. So and after that, I studied physics engineering, and I have always been interested in, of course, astronomy and science and astrophysics, and also photography. During university times, I was member of photography clubs and everything. And at the end, I ended up doing astrophotography for 8 years time. And this is one of the astronomy and astrophotography clubs that I was founder member. So it is called Ankara Astronomy. With another two of my friends, we formed this, and we had lots of astro camping. This is somewhere like 200 kilometers away from Ankara, where I live. All over the country, astrophotographers and astronomy enthusiasts would come, and we would stay in tents, and we would use the night sky, which is really dark here because it's far from big cities. And I also made speeches in university astronomy clubs. For instance, this is my university. It's Hacettepe University in Ankara. I went there. I was invited to talk about astrophotography. And this is actually a very special one. In 2018, I was one of the first amateur astronomer and amateur astrophotographer invited to National Astronomy Congress. So I was talking about DSLR camera and lens astrophotography there. And then 2 years ago, me and two other friends formed this one. It's called Stellar Experiences. Actually, one of the founder friend is also here, Okan, and another friend was John. So this Stellar Experiences was aiming professional astrophotography courses and astrophotography and astronomy related experiences in Turkey. And because of COVID pandemics, we were able to have one face-to-face courses and lots of online courses within 2020 and 2021. Yes, let's start astrophotography. So astronomy and astrophotography. And astronomy is a science of the sun, moon, stars, planets, or in other words, universe, how things happen in universe, and tries to build universal laws of astrophysics. That's called astronomy, and it is one of the science that can be done by amateur people. So I never heard something like amateur medicine or amateur physics, but astronomy can be done as amateur astronomers and people. And amateur astronomers are actually discovering lots of stuff. Even they discover planets around other stars. They discover comets and everything. And astrophotography, or in other words, astronomical imaging, is type of photography shoots astronomical objects, celestial events, and areas of the night sky. And the first photograph of astronomical object, the moon, was taken in 1840. But we would say the astrophotography started in 19th century because the technology was more advanced in before. And astrophotography is really, really multi disciplinary hobby. that involves lots of different science and also art. For instance, optics, electronics, hardwares, and lots of computer using and other science stuff, and also art is involved in astrophotography. And astrophotography has some subtypes, of course. We will be talking about this one today. It's wide field astrophotography. It is astrophotography of wider areas in the night sky or events like Milky Way, constellations, meteor showers, or aurora borealis or aurora australis. These type of astrophotography is called wide field astrophotography, and they are it's basically using some part of the Earth as foreground and night sky. It is called wide field astrophotography. Another astrophotography type is called solar system, planetary, moon, or sun astrophotography. Maybe we could differentiate sun astrophotography because the camera and the techniques are used a little bit different. And for planetary, I mean, for, let's say, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, Mars photography, and moon photography is a little bit different than the sun astrophotography. And of course, the last one, I would say, deep space astrophotography, where you take photos of galaxies, nebulae, and star clusters, which can be open star clusters or globular star clusters. Maybe we can add something else here, because with the modern technology and new trackers, people can take photos of satellites. Let's say they can even take photos of Hubble. They can take photos of International Space Station and other satellites. So that might be another different type of astrophotography. And this is a sample of wide field astrophotography. This place is called Mekke Lake. It's a crater lake near the province Konya here in Turkey. So we can see here the Orion constellation and the Canis Major, the big dog. And so it is like you're seeing some portion of the Earth as a foreground and night sky. And we always advise people to start with wide field astrophotography if they really don't know what they want to do in astrophotography, because they can start with their own, if they have already a camera and a wide angle lens, or even sometimes with quality phones, they can start wide field astrophotography without spending lots of money, because astrophotography takes really dedication and patience. That's why it is good to start from here and move forward. And let's start with the equipment. What we need, like I said, we are today talking about wide field astrophotography, so we will be talking about equipment needed for this type of astrophotography. First of all, we need, of course, a DSLR or DSLM. DSLR stands for Digital Single Lens Reflex, or Digital Single Lens Mirrorless Camera. A wide-angle lens. Sometimes this wide-angle lens can even be a kit lens that comes with the camera. They're usually 18 to 50 millimeters, 55 millimeters. If you don't want to invest so much money, you can start with that lens. And a tripod, because of course, I would have to say a sturdy tripod, because tripod is really important, but we will come to details later. and a headlamp, because of course we will be using in the dark in the field. A headlamp with a red LED light is preferably even better. And some optional equipment can be counted as intervalometer, a cell phone and a star app on it, and a friend. Friend is actually not optional, I would say, and I wouldn't go anywhere at night without a friend, because there could be some wild animal danger and also other dangers. So I wouldn't advise you to guys go out at night on your own without a friend. Okay, let's start with DSLR cameras. As you all know, you're all almost photographers, so this is actually the same design without digital single lens reflex cameras. So there is a mirror here. It has 45 degrees angle, and the vision coming through the lens is reflected by this mirror, and you can see it through the visor. And when you click on the shutter, this mirror goes up, and the light coming through the lens reflects on the sensor, which was filmed before. So the idea is exactly the same like the analog cameras. It's just digital. Instead of film, there is a sensor. And you see, this is a digital mirrorless camera. Here, we don't have the mirror. The light coming through lens directly goes to sensor, and the visor that you see, the image comes directly from the sensor. So this is digital mirrorless cameras. This has one, I would say, this disadvantage, that as soon as you take the lens off, you have the sensor. So it is a little bit fragile, that you shouldn't touch, or you shouldn't let something touch to the sensor, preferably. And we have modified cameras. Maybe some of you have heard that we use astrophotographers modified cameras to get more red in our photos, which is important because there are lots of red stuff in the night sky, and that red stuff actually comes from hydrogen atoms. As you all know, hydrogen has one proton and one electron. So it is the most basic element, and the most abundant element in universe. And the universe, right after a Big Bang, there was only hydrogen, and those hydrogen atoms got together with gravity, and they formed stars, and stars formed star clusters, and they formed nebulae, and then they formed galaxies. So still, in universe, the most abundant element is hydrogen, and hydrogen atom glows red when it is stimulated by some outside radiations. For instance, if there is a nearby star which is young and energetic, the UV lights from stars goes and stimulates hydrogen atoms, and they glow in red. So we have to capture that. You see, this camera is Nikon D810, and there is A. This A stands for astronomy, astrophotography, because just in few slides, I will be explaining the structure of the sensor. You will see some filters right in front of the sensor. One of that filter cuts that red light we want. But for this camera, that that filter is weakened on purpose so that this camera would collect more hydrogen alpha red light, but also can be used for the daylight purposes. And this is another camera. It's from Canon, and it is called 60DA. So this is also deliberately manufactured for astrophotography. It also has weakened filter in front of the sensor to be able to get more red lights. And this is one of the recent cameras that was manufactured by Canon. It's called Canon EOS RA. Again, A stands for astrophotography. So this is the latest camera manufactured for astrophotographers. These are cameras that are manufactured by the manufacturer, and some astrophotographers buy normal stock cameras and remove that filter and have a camera a lot more sensitive than these cameras for that red light. Here also there's another option for modifying the cameras. There are some companies that buy stock cameras and they modify the camera. They take off the filter, and they also, you see here, it's not a lens, it's a cooling system. Because as we use with longer exposures, our sensor tends to heat. And that heat comes with a price, which is thermal noise, which is something that we don't want. So to cool the sensor, there's a cooler, and of course the filter is taken off. So this is another type of modified camera. And here we are looking at a camera. It doesn't look like a camera, but this is a camera that we use for deep sky astrophotography that can be mounted right behind the telescope. And here you can see the sensor. This type of telescope cameras don't have that filter already, so they are sensitive to hydrogen alpha light by manufacturing. And these cameras have active cooling system with Peltier systems. So you can cool this cameras down to, let's say, -10, -20, -30. Some cameras even colder. And so for deep sky astrophotography, we use this type of cameras. And let's have a look at digital camera sensors. There are actually two main types of digital camera sensors. One of them is CCD sensors, which stands for Charged Coupled Device. And this is a little bit an older technology. It has some advantages and disadvantages because of the reading method of the data in the pixels. These are pixels. They're slower and they consume more energy because they have other circuits outside of the sensor, so they tend to consume more energy. But their noise level is very low, and also they are more expensive. This type of sensors, CCD sensors, were once used in DSLR cameras. For instance, if you remember Nikon D70, D70S, those cameras have had CCD sensors, but because they need more energy, the cameras should have manufactured even larger because they needed larger batteries, and they were more expensive, and they were slower creating the image. And now we have CMOS sensors, and it stands for complementary metal oxide semiconductor. And today, all the sensors, all the cameras that we have CMOS sensors. Your CCTV system, your cell phone, your webcam, your DSLR, or your mirrorless camera have CMOS sensors. It also has some advantages and disadvantages. They are faster because of the reading system is different. They consume less energy, so that means that you can have smaller cameras with smaller batteries, and they can go longer. They're a bit noisier, but it doesn't mean that they're super noisier. And the technology is creating new CMOS sensors every day to reduce this noise and improve the low light conditions. And they are much cheaper. And with the developing, advancing technology, CMOS sensors are going to go over CCD sensor at one level. So let's have a look at the anatomy of a sensor. Actually, all sensors, even the ones in your cell phone, even the ones in your webcam, are black and white. They are mono cameras, mono sensors actually. But we have something called Bayer matrix. Here you can see Bayer matrix, or it's also called color filter array, or CFA in short. This, as you can see, to create one pixel, we use two greens, one red and one blue. And these filters passes the red light, blue light, green light, and it creates the color image. Why there is two greens? First of all, human eye is more sensitive to green light. That's why they create more realistic images. And also, green light tends to have more signal in it. So your photos would have better signal in the finished photo. And second, we have low pass filter, or it's also called anti-alias filter here in B. This filter works especially for repetitive patterns. Like, for instance, I'm sure you all remember shooting a fabric with some fine lines or repetitive patterns. Then you will see some moire, color moire there, and it's because of anti-aliasing effect, or called moire effect. So this filter avoids that moire effect to happen, but it causes a little bit of blurring in the final image. That's why camera manufacturers, while they are using low-pass filters, they also use softwares to reduce the effect of low-pass filter. But on the other hand, us astrophotographers tend to use cameras without low-pass filter, and this information can be found specifications of the camera, or you can directly ask the camera manufacturer if the camera that you're going to buy has a low pass filter or not. And C, it's infrared filter. Remember, I was talking about the red light that we want in our pictures, coming from hydrogen, glowing hydrogen atoms. This filter is actually designed to cut that light, but us astrophotographers want to have it. As you saw in the previous slides, either manufacturer weakens this filter, or us astrophotographers just take off this filter. And most of the time, astrophotographers take also the low pass filter if there is any, so that the camera sensor is free of low pass filter and infrared filter, which can produce more clarified, clear images with more clarity and images with more red light coming from hydrogen atoms. And some circuits. These circuits are actually in CMOS sensors, because in CMOS sensors, remember I said it's faster. The reason because it's fast, because of these circuits. Every pixel has own circuit. So every data in the pixel is written by the circuit and transferred to camera. And there are some micro lenses. These micro lenses funneling the light coming from the lens onto the pixels. And here we have pixels, and we have black pixels. These pixels are covered with some black material on purpose to measure the noise, even if there is no light coming from outside on the pixel. And this noise, after that, is subtracted from the image to have less noisy images. And we have some sensor parameters. First of all, we have the sensor size. We have medium format, full frame, APS-H, APS-C, 3/4, 1 inch, and goes like that. For wide field astrophotography, we prefer, if possible, and if our budget is available, we prefer full frame cameras. APS-H cameras once were used by Canon. The size of this sensor was somewhere between full frame and APS-C cameras, but then they left this one also. And nowadays, we have the full frame, most common, and APS-C sensors. Like I said, we prefer full frames, but if you are on low budget, then we can also use APS-C cameras for wide field astrophotography. I have seen some people using medium format, but I wouldn't recommend, because it has some disadvantages. For instance, it has a wider sensor, so the file size will be larger, and it will be hard to deal with while processing, or it will be hard to deal with while storing. So that's why I don't recommend medium formats. If our budget is okay, full frame, and if you are on budget, then we can use APS-C cameras. And here we have something called crop factor, which is important. In full frame cameras, it is 1. And in APS-C cameras, it's 1.5. We accept 1.5. And in Canon cameras, it's 1.6, actually. This actually shows that how smaller this sensor than the full frame sensor. And it also shows our field of view respective to our lens. For instance, if you're using an APS-C camera, and if you're using 10 millimeter lens, then actually that means that you're using 15 millimeter lens. So This shows how wide or how deep we are looking at our objects with the lens and the sensor. And pixel size, let's say here we have two images. Let's say this sensor is full frame sensor. So if the pixel size is smaller, then we have more pixels. And of course, if we have larger pixels, then we have less pixels. This is actually the digital resolution of your camera. This is what your camera's megapixel. So if it is 18 megapixel or 18 million pixel, there's 18 million pixels in your sensor. Or let's say it is 12, then there is 12 million pixels on your sensor. What does this show is digital resolution, like I said. If you increase the digital resolution, then you decrease the pixel size, like this. For instance, this is 12, this is 24. So number of pixels in this one is 2 times of this one. And when you are using a higher digital resolution camera, you have to use a lens with a higher optical resolution so that you can have better images. And this, of course, affects the price really badly. As most of you know, sometimes some good lenses can be double, triple price of, even quadruple price of a body. So for astrophotography, we stick with somewhere between 18 to 24 megapixels of camera. But if your budget is okay, of course you can go for cameras with 40 million pixels and above. Then you will need to buy some higher end optics for those type of cameras. Quantum efficiency is every astrophotographer should know what it is and look at the camera specs when they're buying one. It is actually the sensitivity of the sensor to photons. A sensor actually transforms photons to electrons, and those electrons are stored in pixels. Then it is read by some mechanism, some circuits, and then it's transferred into the image. So the quantum efficiency is the ratio of electrons and photons measured as percentage. The higher the quantum efficiency, more sensitive the sensor is. So let's have a look at the sensor. Here, this blue box is pixel. That's where we keep the electrons. And as you can see, there is a sensor. Photons are coming, and electrons are created by photons. The percentage between the electrons created and the photons is called quantum efficiency. For instance, in this example, let's not see the blue box. There are 6 photons and 3 electrons created. So the quantum efficiency of this sensor would be 50%. So 50% effective. We look for sensors that has a higher quantum efficiency because we are shooting very dim objects. So every photon counts. Every photon is important. We have to transfer photons into electrons as much as possible because we are working with ancient photos that are coming from all the way from millions of light years away, and number of them are really, really small. So that's why every photons matter for us, and we have to look for cameras with higher quantum efficiencies. And I will show you where we can see these parameters on internet. So once the sensor creates electrons, they are stored in the pixels. It is shown as a three-dimensional thing here, but it's not actually a three-dimensional thing. It's two-dimensional surface. And this, every pixel has a capacity of holding electrons. That is called full well capacity or saturation capacity. And it is measured by electrons, number of electrons. This is also important for us because if you are shooting an object with really high dynamic range, that means that there are lots of dark areas and also bright areas. So when you're shooting this image, the parts in the bright image part in the object will fill the sensor before the other parts of the image. So as one part is being oversaturated, the other part will be downsaturated. So it will not be saturated. So it's not possible to get details from the underexposed or overexposed areas. So that's why we are looking for cameras which has more saturation capacity or full well depth. And also here we can see when the electrons are collected, then it is measured by a voltmeter. And this voltmeter, if you studied science, you all will know that every measuring device has a measuring mistake. So every time this number of electrons are measured, this device is going to make some mistake. And that mistake is called readout noise. And this will come in our pictures as readout noise. Some manufacturers, all manufacturers actually, are trying to improve their readout technology so that cameras and sensors create less readout noise. That's why we can also see these readout noise values from a website. Before we decide buying a camera for astrophotography, we have to check quantum efficiency, full well depth, and also the readout noise levels. And other thing is dynamic range. I'm sure as you all photographers know what dynamic range is. Dynamic range is actually a range of light intensities from the shadows to the highlights. And in low light conditions, the dynamic range is quite small. For instance, if you are shooting in a room with a very low light, then the brighter and the darker parts of the photos will not be so different than each other. But if you are shooting on a bright sunny day, the range is much higher. So your camera should have more dynamic range to capture those differences. For instance, this is home looking out. I shot 3 pictures. First of all, here in this one, you can also do the histograms, but for histograms, we will work in the next lesson more, what histogram is and how to read the histogram. But in this picture, these are taken my cell phone, by the way. In this one, the light measurement was taken from the sky. You see, we can see the details from the sky but we cannot see anything, any details from this part of the photo under the tables. And in histogram, this part of the table is represented by this wall. This is the pixels with 0 values. So they didn't catch any light. And this side is the pixels with values with 1, which means they are saturated with light. So as you can see, we have lots of dark spots here, and we have details and histogram. In this histogram, this part stands for this part, and I would say this part stands for this part, the night sky and the brightest part. In this one, this time the light measurement was taken from under the table, where it is totally dark in this picture. So here we can see details. We can see some stuff under the tables, and we can see really nice picture and details here. But this time, as you can see, the night sky is overexposed. And let's have a look at the histogram. You will see this part. The sky portion of the photo stands for this part of the histogram because it's overexposed. You cannot get any details from here. It is all white. There is nothing there. So we don't want this. Okay. And the last one, I adjusted my cell phone camera to HDR mode, which makes different photos from different light values of the picture and combines them. So it is called high dynamic range photos. There are actually 2 types of dynamic range. The first dynamic range is the dynamic range of your camera. And the second, the dynamic range of your image. So here in this one, we have a very high dynamic range because there is very bright sky and there is also very dark parts of the picture. So to capture this type of photo, we should have a higher dynamic, a camera with higher dynamic range, or we have to use high dynamic range technique to be able to have details from everywhere. Of course, if you're not aiming a photo like this, if you're aiming a photo like this one, you want this part to be black and this part to be like this and like this, then it's perfectly fine. But if you're willing to have a balanced photo like this one, then you have to use camera with higher dynamic range or high dynamic range methods. But in astrophotography, we don't use most modern DSLRs and DSLMs and cell phones have high dynamic range mode, but we don't use that mode for astrophotography. We prefer double or triple exposures and then combine them. For instance, we are looking at a solar eclipse here. This photo is, let's have a look at this one first and look at the histogram. As you can see, again, we have the darks here and we have shadows and we have the bright parts. To be able to have a photo like this, so as you can see, the histogram is distributed very well and there are no blacks or there are no whites. In astrophotography, we shoot double exposure, one for the low light part and another for the higher light one, and we combine them as a dynamic range photo. Let's have a look at little bit at ISO and ASA, which was back then for the film photography. We used to have films with 100, which was for the normal condition, normal light conditions, and we used to have smaller ASA photos, which was for most of the time studio shoots, and we of course used to have 200, 400, 800, and 1600 ISO or ASA photos. Let's have a look at the structure of a film. Films had silver halide crystals as the sensitive stuff to light. So as you know, silver, when it is exposed to light, it gets darker. So silver halide crystals was used for film to create the black and white or color pictures. And to increase the light sensitivity of the films, this silver, they used to play with the size of this silver halide crystals. Let's have a look. For instance, if your film was 100 ASA, it had smaller silver halide crystals, and if it was 200, let's say it used to have twice size of the 100 ones, and vice versa. And this made films, for instance, 200 comparing to 100, 2 times more sensitive to light, because the crystals were bigger and the sensitivity of the film to light was bigger. For digital cameras, it is a little bit different story. The term ISO is used because the term ISO is actually stands for International Standards Organization. We use ISO for the films, but it's not the same thing. Once you dial your camera from 100 to 200 ISO, you don't increase the size of your pixels by 2, or you don't increase the number of photons that hits your sensor by 2. What you do is, here you can see some light coming through the lens, and it hits your sensor, and it goes to analog to digital converter, and it creates the image. But once you dial your ISO from, let's say, 200 to 400, like I said, you're not doubling your pixel size, so they would be more sensitive to light, or you don't double your full well depth, so your pixels could collect more electrons, or you don't increase the number of photons that hits your sensor. So what you're doing is, just before ADC, you amplify your data by 2 electronically. So what you're doing when you're increasing your ISO is amplifying your light. Sorry, not light. The information from the sensor, and then you create the image. So it looks like that you increase the light sensitivity of your sensor, but it's not what you do actually. Why I told this? Because we should have come to ISO performance of your camera, which is also important for astrophotography, as we are working in low light conditions. I'm comparing two cameras here, Nikon D5300 and Nikon D750. Nikon D5300 is has an APS-C sensor, and D750 has a full-frame sensor. So let's have a look. This camera with 1600 ISO, a raw picture, looks quite clean actually. I can see some chromatic noise, which is color noise actually, and I can also see some lightness noise, luminance noise also. But it can be acceptable and can be reduced during post-process. But once you bump up your ISO to 1280, 800, then you start seeing lots of chromatic noise and lots of luminosity noise, luminance noise. So it is not good. You can reduce a bit of this noise while post-processing, but your final image will not be a very good one. And let's have a look at this 750, again with 1600 ISO. It is so clean. It's almost like shot at 100 ISO. Then we are looking at 12,800 ISO results. Now we started to see some chromatic noise and some luminance noise, which can be again can be processed out during the post-process. So what ISO performance is not only the sensor or sensor size, it also is the dynamic range of your sensor, and also the full well depth of your sensor, the quantum efficiency of your sensor, and moreover, your cameras has some kind of image processor in them. This image processors aims to create less noisy images. So what we call ISO performance is sum of all these things. Sorry, I'm just drinking a sip of water. Yeah, and we are coming to an end here about the cameras. While picking a camera for astrophotography, of course, our budget is important, and what kind of astrophotography we are aiming. We have to decide the cameras within our budget. So we have to look at the quantum efficiency. We have to look at the readout noise. We have to look at the processor power and speed of the camera, which is important, which will show you the speed of your camera. And of course, we are looking at resolution and pixel size. Like I said, we tend to stay between 18 to 24, or we can actually prefer 24 nowadays. And we have to look at the dynamic range and the ISO performance. Our camera should better have a live view, because we use live view to create our framing and also for focusing. And a tilt screen would also be really nice, because sometimes we will come to that point when we use star trackers. Our cameras sometimes are in different positions that we may have difficulty to look at the screen because of the position of camera. So if the camera screen can be tilted, it's even better. And here we can have some external resources to check all these parameters that we've been mentioning. And I will actually show you. Yes, here. My screen has changed, right? You see the website? Can someone tell me?
Yeah.
No. Okay. So this website is very important. It is called photons2photos.net. And as this is being recorded, and you can see afterwards, or you can just DM me to get the links. You can see lots of sensor characteristics in this website. For instance, let's choose some. As I'm a Nikon guy, I'm going to choose a Nikon camera and see. For instance, new Nikon Z6 II is here. So when you choose from the list here, you get Unity ISO, which is the gain, actually the native gain manufactured by the camera sensor manufactured. It is 500 almost. So when you are using it at 500 ISO, this means that it is like actually you're not using any ISO. And you can see the full well capacity. It is 75 kilo electrons, which is quite a lot. So like remember when I was talking about the sensor anatomy, we have this box, the blue box, where the electrons were collected. The number of electrons is 75 kilo electrons. So that's a lot of electrons. And read noise, it is again by electron, it is 0.9. And this is not so important, conversion noise. And quantum efficiency is can be acceptable for a mirrorless camera, 55. That means that the efficiency of the sensor is 55. And then it is ISO invariant at ISO is 2495. So you can compare cameras. For instance, let's compare this camera with a Canon camera. If there is something I'm looking for, let's compare Canon EOS RA. For instance, you see quantum efficiencies are equal. No, not equal. Canon EOS is sorry, it's 51%. And read noise, as you can see, it's higher, even higher. It's almost more than twice. It is a lot. Full well capacity is lower. So if you're looking at those two cameras, I would pick Nikon Z6. You see, full well capacity is higher, and quantum efficiency is higher, and readout noise is a lot less than Nikon RA. So you can use this website to check camera that you have or that you're planning to buy. And oops, and I'm going back to the slides. And there are other websites. I'm sure you all know the preview. I'm sure you all know the XO mark. And Cloudy Nights is a forum for astrophotographers. Its name is so funny because astrophotographers are in indoors when the nights are cloudy. So that's why they called Cloudy Nights. And you can find lots of information, and you can ask experiences from people. They're about cameras, lenses, telescopes, or astronomy dedicated cameras and everything. Before we start lenses, if you like, I can get some questions, and I can drink some water.
Sure. If you have a question, go ahead and just type in the general chat and I'll unmute you. If you have any questions.
Looks like no questions. Okay,
I
then
think
I
we're
will.
good.
Okay, then I'll continue. So as you remember, for wide-field astrophotography, we need a lens, and it should actually be a wide-angle lens. I don't want to go so deeper because everybody's a photographer here, and I'm sure they all know more than I do about the lenses and types of lenses. We have wide-angle lenses and standard lenses, telephoto and macro lenses, and we have prime and zoom lenses. What I can say here is we prefer faster optics with faster lenses and prime lenses in astrophotography. And we will have a look at some details. As you all know, there is a point inside the lens. It's called point of convergence, and the distance between this point and the sensor is called focal length. So when we are looking at the lens, we see a brand, and then the focal length and the focal number or focal ratio, and then some other specifications like, for instance, ED, AS, or something like that. Sometimes manufacturers give special names to their some specifications. And again, here we can see the classifications of the lens according to focal length. So I'm not going to go in details with this one because everybody should know these details. And again, we know that wide-angle lens actually shows that we are going to have a larger field of view than a telephoto lens. So for astrophotography, depending on our camera, we prefer, I would say, 50 millimeters or wider lenses. And I have seen some crazy people using 50, 85 millimeters to create panoramas. And that crazy people is among us, actually, my friend Okan. He loves creating, I mean, I'm saying crazy, but in a good way. He's creating some panorama pictures with 85 millimeters to have a picture like this. That's crazy. And I also do that sometimes from time to time. Like I said, we tend to use wide-angle lenses for wide-field astrophotography. And we know that one of the most important parameter of a lens is called aperture or F ratio. It's actually the division of the focal length by the physical aperture of the lens. So it is called with the small f, f divided by a. So let's say we have a 100 millimeter lens, and the physical aperture or the diameter of the primary optic is 50 millimeter. Then we will have f2.0 lens, right? So this means this lens is fast lens. So it lets more light than a lens like this. Again, we have, let's say we have 100 millimeter lens with 25 millimeter radius, diameter. So we will have 100 divided by 25, which will be 4. It looks like good. Actually, the number is bigger, but it's not good because it slows down our lens, which means this lens will collect 2 times more light than this one when you're using the same ISO and also the same exposure time. So for astrophotography, we really need lenses with smaller f numbers or higher aperture because we are dealing with low light conditions. And the more photons, like I said, every photon is count. So we have to have more photons through the lens. And this also has something else. I will just start to mention. Of course, the lenses are being improved every day, but they are not flawless. They all have some flaws called aberrations, and lenses tend to have those aberrations when they are used wide open. So this lenses with lower f numbers, for instance, let's say we have f 1.4 lens and has some aberrations that we will start talking about now. What we can do is, without losing or with losing a little light, for instance, stopping down from 1.4 to 2 or 2.8, we still have lots of lights, and we can be free of those aberrations also. But if we have a 4.0 lens with aberrations, we cannot stop down because we will lose lots of light. So we prefer lenses with faster or higher aperture, and the lenses showing aberrations at the when they are wide open or when they are stopped down at least one stop. So we have aberrations. These are the, like I said, flaws that our lenses optics create. Some of them are inevitable, but we have ways to come over these aberrations. The first one is chromatic aberration. When there is no aberration, as you know, maybe I should start like this. As you know, when the light goes through a medium, different wavelengths of lights travel at different speeds in this medium. Here, in our lens, it's a glass. So, and our light has different wavelengths of lights, like red, green, blue, and other colors, right? If this was a perfect lens, all the different wavelengths would converge in at the same spot. So there wouldn't be any chromatic aberration. And I will show what chromatic aberration looks like when you're shooting astrophotography. I'm sure most of you experienced, especially at the high contrast regions, you will see some color fringing like purple, magenta, or green. For instance, if you ever shoot a moon, I'm sure you saw that some green at the edge of moon or magenta. That's called color aberration or color fringing. And we have actually two types of chromatic aberrations. One of them is longitudinal chromatic aberration, And this chromatic aberration can be at any point of the image. So it can be in the center, it can be near the edge, it can be in the middle, everywhere. And they can be all over the image. And when you stop down your diaphragm, some of the chromatic aberration will be gone. So it is good. And it is go for astrophotography. So the lenses with longitudinal chromatic aberration can be used for astrophotography. Because in the first place, you can stop down your lens and you will be free of some chromatic aberration. And some of the chromatic aberration also be withdrawn during the post-process. And the second one is lateral chromatic aberration. And in the lateral chromatic aberration, the chromatic aberration will be only seen near the edges of the photos. They will never be in the near somewhere center in the picture. So if you see chromatic aberration only in the only around the edges, that is lateral chromatic aberration. And there is no chromatic aberration in the center. I will show you how you can see that. And with this type of chromatic aberration, if you stop down your lens, the chromatic aberration will not be gone, and it's no go for astrophotography. If you heard one lens has lateral chromatic aberration, then don't buy it, because then you will have to deal with that. And I had a lens like that when I started. You know, I was cleaning literally thousands of stars one by one. So it's not a good thing, you know, it's really time-consuming thing. Yeah, so if we have a lens without chromatic aberration, our stars would look like this, you know. As you can see, there is no color fringing around the stars. Because as you can see, as I said, the highest contrast difference is between star and the space. And here we see a lens, stars shot with a lens with chromatic aberration. You can see some color fringing around the stars, which is something that we don't want. Like I said, depending on the type of the chromatic aberration, you can omit a little bit of it while post-processing, and also while shooting the photos by by stopping down your diaphragm. And second aberration type is coma. The name coma comes from comet, actually. If your lens has chromatic aberration, then you will see your stars will look like this, and especially near the edges. And this is definitely something we don't want. And in astrophotography, we always talk about pinpoint stars. So we always want to have pinpoint stars. So that's why if there is a lens with extremely big chromatic aberration, don't buy that lens. But good enough, you can omit some of the chromatic aberration by stopping down again. But you cannot process out with the post processing if your lens has chromatic aberration. And another type of aberration is called astigmatism. And astigmatism is the most common aberration even the most expensive lenses have. So it has two types, and it's tangential and sagittal types. So it will be like, again, near around the edges, So there will be like a circular motion in the stars, moving like this, having some tails on each side. Again, stopping down works for astigmatism. That's why we really have to look for faster lenses or smaller f numbers of lenses for astrophotography. And spherical aberration, as you can see, as its name suggests, we would have some spherical blurriness around the stars, which we don't want because it will give the blurry effect to the whole picture. So if there's a lens that has spherical aberration, we should definitely stay away from that lens. Again, stopping down kind of works, but I would stay away from this type of lens. One of the other type of aberration, which doesn't bother as much as the others does, because this can be fixed during post-processing almost totally, and it has two types, actually three types, but these are the most common two types. It's pincushion and barrel distortion, especially in the wide-angle lenses. Barrel distortion is seen more often, but we can fix it by stopping down or by post-process. As most of you know, in Adobe Lightroom, there is a module that you can pick pick your lens and fix some of these aberrations. For instance, in this one I took in somewhere in cornea. There is barrel distortion, and also there is other stuff we will talk. Yeah. So we have distortion here. With one button in Adobe Lightroom, we can be free of that distortion. And when I click on the mouse, you will see the difference. See, with the distortion, it's barrel distortion, and without distortion. So with one click, we can omit the distortion and Adobe Lightroom during the post process. And the next one is vignetting. By the way, this photograph is from my friend Okan. I don't know if he's still here in New Zealand when he was there. You can see quite prominent vignetting in this picture. Of course, some photographers like vignetting as a composition element, but some don't. For instance, I don't. For this one, again, you can use the lens profiles in Adobe Lightroom. And if Adobe Lightroom doesn't have your lens, your brand, and the specific model, then you can just apply to your manufacturer of your lens, and you can ask for the Adobe Lightroom profile, and you can upload it to your Adobe Lightroom, and you can use that. And again, here there is a barrel distortion and vignetting. With one button, I will fix that. See, before and after, before and after. So we really fixed the vignetting, and we fixed the barrel distortion. Here we are looking at a picture, and we will see some different parts of the picture and review it in terms of chromatic aberration, coma, and astigmatism. that's how you can test your lenses, or you can, of course, look for reviews from other people. Most of the time, people will take photos with wide open f number, and they will stop down and take, and they will compare these different regions of the photos to see what kind of aberrations their lenses create. So before you buy the lens, you can either read this type of reviews, or if you have a lens already, you can test it like this. So I don't remember which lens was it, but I think it was um, Tokina 11 to 16 f2.8 wide-angle lens, and as far as I remember, it was either Nikon D7100 or 7200 camera. So we will look at 1, 2, and 3. Let's have a look at 1. It's in the center. Like I said, the lenses tend not to have those aberrations near the center, and we can see pinpoint stars. There are no chromatic aberration. There are no chromatic aberration. We don't see comet-like structures in the stars. This is what really we really want. You know, we always want pinpoint stars without any aberration. But let's have a look at the corners. So we are going left and up corner. The second one here. We looked at this port, and now we are looking at this port. So we now started to have, I don't know if it's clear, but this star is obviously have some chromatic aberration. At one part, I can see some magenta color cast and green color cast. So, and as you can see, the star is not round, it's not pinpoint. It is a little bit elongated. So I would say this chart has both coma and astigmatism, because there are elongation on the two axes. So it's not good. You could either not use this lens, or you could stop down. It's f2.8 lens. You could stop down to 3.5, which would be the maximum diaphragm that you could stop down to, or buy another lens. So, and now we are looking at the right corner of the photo, and things are getting even uglier here, as you can see. We see very obvious chromatic aberration, and we can definitely see the coma, and we can see the astigmatism together. So as a result, this lens wasn't mine, and I wouldn't buy this lens for astrophotography because it's not fast enough to stop down, because it's f2.8. If you stop down, it will be 3 or 3.5. And I don't remember the results, because I tested it, but I don't remember the results at 3 or 3.5. But you would be losing lots of light. So I wouldn't prefer a lens like this. But on the other hand, when you're looking at the whole picture, if you're not pixel peeping, you could see a little bit of, you know, stars that looks like it shouldn't look like here or here. But for instance, in second picture, remember, there was still little hint of some aberrations. So, depending on your budget and depending on your purpose, you can either buy this lens or not. But if you are aiming a higher quality, it's better not to buy a lens like this for astrophotography. We have another saying in astrophotography: pinpoint stars corner to corner, because, like I said, in the first one, in the center, there's no problem. There's always problems at the corners. So we want corner to corner pinpoint stars. So when we are buying a lens, that's something that we really have to be careful of. And again, we can have somewhere here. Of course, budget is really important with lens, because lenses might be really, really expensive. Even 2 times, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times price of a camera body. And we are deciding focal length depending on our sensor size. If it is a full frame, we would accept 25 millimeter or wider as wide angle lens. And if we have APS-C camera, then we would consider buying something 24 millimeters or wider. And of course, aperture or f ratio. If our budget is available, we have to go for the lowest f number. But of course, it will increase the price dramatically. And we prefer prime lenses. Again, depending on your budget, because some of the zoom lenses are much cheaper than the prime lenses. Depending on your budget, you can prefer zoom, but we prefer prime lenses in the first place. And if you're going to use this lens only for astrophotography, then you should definitely choose a manual focus lens, because in astrophotography, we never ever use autofocus. So you wouldn't need to pay extra money for autofocus system. So just buy a manual focus lens, and because you will be using manual focus. And again, for vibration reduction, there is now really advanced technologies to reduce vibration reduction. But in astrophotography, as we use our camera and lens on a tripod, we don't really need vibration reduction. And even our lens has vibration reduction, we turn it off. So again, if you are going to use this lens only for astrophotography, you can pick one lens without a vibration reduction. Again, it will save you some money. And of course, the aberrations. You use ED or achromatic or apochromatic lenses for color aberration. This ED stands for extra low dispersion. Achromatic or apochromatic lenses uses special coatings to avoid color aberrations. And again, we can use these websites, the Preview, the Xomark, and Kendrackwell.com, and I'm sure there are other many websites that you can see and read reviews from different people, or you can directly Google the specific lens astrophotography performance and read the reviews, or you can ask people who has experience with the specific lens. And if you want to improve our astrophotography, then we can buy a star tracker to increase the exposure time that we can have without having this stars trail like this. Because the Earth is rotating around itself, and this polar axis, the axis the Earth rotates, is looking right at the Polaris, the North Star. And I'm sure you all have seen photos like this, or maybe even shoot photos like this. It is called star trails. When you are facing Polaris and shooting photos, you will, and if you have long enough exposures, then you will see a circular motion like this, and stars will be trailing. This is because of the rotation of the Earth. But from our perspective, it looks like actually the stars are moving, but actually the Earth is moving. So to simulate this movement, we use star trackers. And we align our star trackers to Polaris. And when we point our camera and lens to another direction, as our camera is moving as Earth is moving, then we see stars pinpoint. I'm sure you all shoot or shot photos like this and moving. It's called pan, um, when a car is moving so fast, and if you track the car with your camera, then the car is going to be is going to look like it doesn't move, but the rest of the frame will look like moving. So it is basically the same thing. So we are actually moving the camera with the same speed of Earth and the opposite direction. And then we have the pinpoint stars, and we can have longer exposures, even in minutes long. And what are the benefits of a star tracker? You can shoot longer exposures without star trailing, or with more details, because your sensor will have more photons because the exposure time will be longer. With higher signal to noise ratio, this actually term is very important, but I will mention this term in our next classes. It's basically it basically shows how your signal, the wanted light, is bigger than the unwanted light, which is the noise. And with pinpoint stars like this, and without star trails like this, you see here, if you use a tracker, or if you use short enough exposures, you will have pinpoint stars. But without a tracker, if you go for, let's say, 1 minute exposure, your stars will start trailing, and they will be like lines instead of dots. And we don't want that. So we can see here some different models. This is called, most of them are Chinese, of course. And this is the cheapest one is called MSM, or Move Shoot Move Rotator. Again, I will refer to my friend Okan. He is the brand ambassador for this brand, and this brand has lots of different accessories and very competitive in pricing. And you can contact to him if you want to buy, if you have questions, and if you want to buy, you can get some discount code from him. And the second one is another brand, Rixen, and its brand is called Polari. So it's basically you put it on a tripod, and this axis looks right at the polar is. So it is called polar alignment, and you see there is a ball head here. You can mount your camera here, and you can shoot the object you want, and you can have a minutes long exposure. And this is another brand, almost the same design. It's Ioptron Sky Tracker. Here you can see there is something like a telescope. This is for polar aligning, and you can again mount a ball head here, and you can put your camera on top. And these are, I would say, medium priced ones. But these three are only for wide field astrophotography. So you would shoot wide field astrophotography like Milky Ways or constellations and stuff like that with these three. Because these star trackers, one of the most important parameter is how much weight that they can carry. So they are classified with that parameter. So these three has ability of carrying a camera and a wide-angle lens. And you can see some other different models here. This is called Skywatcher Star Adventure. With this one, as you can see, you can mount your camera here, and there is a counterweight bar and counterweight, so that the tracking would be more accurate, and it wouldn't bother the gears within the machine. And with this one and this one, they're almost the same. This is Ioptron Skyguider Pro, and this is Skywatcher Star Adventure. They're almost more or less the same price. And you can use some short some short focal length lenses, like up to 200 millimeters, and shoot deep sky objects with these two. But with this one, I wouldn't recommend you doing that because the carriage capacity is low, and the tracking system is a little bit worse than these two. And finally, these are a little bit more expensive. You can buy as a kit. This is called equatorial wedge, the L bracket, and the other things. And there is a polar scope within the instrument that you can do your polar alignment. This also has almost the same mechanism with this one. And finally, you see here, it's my deep sky equipment, my tracker, or we call this mount. Actually, it's an equatorial mount, and my scope and other equipment. You cannot use this one for wide field astrophotography because they are not mobile. These three and these two are mobile equipments that you can carry, and that you can power them with 4 AA batteries, but you cannot do that with this one. This is like 30 kilogram, this piece, and it has, I think, 5 kilogram counterweights and the tripod and everything. You cannot use this for wide angle astrophotography. And this is like the price of this one has like thousands of dollars, and these things go up to 10,000s of, even 100,000s of dollars, depending on the gear that they are using, depending on the software and hardware they are using. And last, one of the last, we need a tripod. I would say it's for the tripod because it's really important. I always tell my students to buy a nicer tripod and spend some money because even though you change your camera and lens and other gears within the years, because your camera will go old, you will want to buy a new model, higher pixels and stuff like that. You can use your tripod for decades, literally. So that's why I recommend buying a nicer and more expensive and higher quality tripod. And if it is possible, changeable hats and there are different types of hats like this one. It's called ball hat. It's called pun tilt hat. It's called geared hat. So for astrophotography, we tend to use ball hats or gear hats, or there are also some panoramical hats that you can buy. Of course, the price will differ. And in the beginning, we talked about the headlamp. It's better to have two, um, one as a spare. I always have two headlamps with me. And we should prefer a headlamp with red lights because red lights will not tire our eyes like the white lights, and we will still be able to see things in the dark. And optional equipments, I would say an intervalometer. Um, if we are going to shoot uh, wide field astrophotos without tracker, or if you are not going to make time lapses, or if you are not going to make star trails, we don't need one of these because most of the new cameras have intervalometers within the camera. But if you are going to need exposures longer than 30 seconds, because most cameras, some of the Fuji cameras have longer exposures that you can use within the camera, but most cameras have only 30 seconds maximum exposure time. So if you are using a star tracker, and if you want to have, let's say, 2 minutes, then you need one of these. And you know that there is some models works with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, or um, you know without cable. Or sometimes some cameras also are supported by some cell phone applications that you can use your camera via your cell phone with an app. Another optional thing, it might be a little difficult navigating your way in the night sky if you're not used to the night sky. If you don't know the constellations and the stars, and you may have difficulty finding your way. So there are lots of different applications that you can upload in your cell phones, even if it is an iOS phone or Android phone, and you can just hold your phone against the sky and see what the object you are looking at. And friend, in the beginning I said it's not an optional thing, but I added here. So it's better to have a friend with you, just in case something happens to you, or safety reasons. It's good to have a friend with you. Up next, in the next class, we will be talking about planning and shooting settings. It would be nice to have a Stellarium program in your computer. It's totally free for PCs, and you can download it from stellarium.org. And it is a it's an application. It's a software that simulates the night sky. You can go anywhere on Earth, and you can go anytime within the time. So you can go to any year, any month, any day, any hour, and you will see how the sky looks like in that given time and place. That's it for today. I really am thankful for all of you being here. If you have questions, I'm more than happy to answer.
Yeah, if anyone has a question, go ahead and type in the general chat or raise your hand or emote, and I'll unmute you. But otherwise, thank you so much, Musthafa, for doing this.
You're welcome. I hope that it was helpful. And looks like there are no questions.
Oh, we got someone typing. Let me see.
Oh, okay.
He says, Kamtono says, how much is the starting budget for this kind of photography?
Oh, okay. Let's see. If you don't have anything at all, of course, it depends on your country. But I would say you could start with a used camera, second-hand camera, and the lens and the tripod. Few $100 would be a starting budget.
Okay, not too bad.
Yeah, not
And
with
we
that.
have another person typing. Let's see.
Okay.
Oh, he's just saying thank you for your time. All right,
You're
I think
welcome.
we're good on questions then.
Yeah.
So we'll go ahead and conclude. Thanks again, Mustafa, for all the time you took to do
You're
this for
welcome.
everyone.
You're welcome.
We really
So we
appreciate it.
can, yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate having this opportunity to explain.